Okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right. The phrase "not clean enough" suggests that Mitch believes that Blanche will make her mother. This is how it's pronounced, Blanche, right?
Yep.
Yes. Almost as if Blanche has a disease. It also suggests that Blanche is not innocent enough to be accepted by him or her mother. This or her mother. Okay, this reflects traditional male attitude of that time. Okay, did you meant to write his?
Um. e-
Yeah.
yeah. His.
Okay. Did you? Yes. It also suggests about who were accepted by him or his mother. This reflects traditional male attitudes of that time and the double standards. The possessive phrase "my house" highlights that Mitch is asserting his dominance and power, controlling who, what he can. Williams might be presenting Mitch as a traditional male here and no longer sensitive and gentle, to imply this most men strive to do dominant and controlling. Okay. This quote also acts as a volta, as Mitch transforms into a copy of the man she despises, Stanley. It's a stage of loss of hope for Blanche as she constantly struggles to find the right man for herself, from Alan Gray to Mitch. This core reflects the social expectations of women during the 1940s. Women were expected to be pure before marriage, which is ironic as the standard did not apply to men. Okay. Williams presents tension with Stella voluntarily accepting her present life as someone of a part of the working class, even though she used to be part of the upper class in her past. Williams does this to highlight sexism in the 1940s by showing that men will always control and dictate women, ignoring their past and who they used to be. Stella's husband, is seen asserting his authority when he heaves a package at her. Tossing the package of meat symbolically captures Stanley and Stella's sexual relationship as he hurls himself physically at her, and she accepts it delightedly. He also uses imperative language when talking to his catch, implying that Stanley doesn't respect Stella as she cries out in protest in response. The word protest is Stella subconsciously wants to get out of the relationship. The use of the meat in the package covered in blood. Stella's past self is dead now and she can't do anything to bring it back. In 1940s America, women were defined by strict gender roles and forced to conform. They had no financial freedom and had to obey their husbands. This is emphasized by the fact that if an upper class was to marry a working class man, the women would be working class, but if a working class woman married an upper class man, she'd be upper class. In A Streetcar Named Desire, tensions between the past and the present were dependent on the specific character. It suggested that one couldn't be dependent on someone to make their income for them. This is shown by both sisters losing Belle Reeve. Okay. All right. Okay, Gulshan, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to be discussing it in terms of all of the AOs with you. All right. But
Mm-hmm.
before we start off, I'm going to discuss the strength of this answer and then the major weakness that I found inherent in this answer. So I think the only thing that this answer really projected was the fact that you were actually able to focus on the question statement itself, the tension between the past and the present. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And of
Yep.
course, you used and you chose relevant characters to portray that idea. You have
Mm-hmm.
shown the examiner, or me, in this case, your teacher, this through Blanche or Stella. You also brought in Stanley and Mitch, because, of course, they, in a manner of speaking, also represent the present world pushing against, you could say, in a manner of speaking, Blanche's past, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you did try to analyze language, but this is, I think, one of the major aspects that was missing, though. Again, and I don't think, Gulshan, this is a very big problem in your writings in the sense of understanding. I feel like you can really do it if you start practicing only individually, not in terms of answers. For example, you pinpoint a quotation from the text, then you figure out its method used, and then you explain it. I hope that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, you will be able to go deeper when you're writing the answer as well, because this is exactly what was the most, you could say, weak point of your answer. That it felt more like a retelling of a plot. So it
Mhm.
feels like you were telling me a story rather than actually developing on the points or analyzing them, or how exactly the author had presented tension. Make sense?
Yep.
For example, again, if let's suppose I have to point it from your answer, Blanche used to be a Southern belle, had a husband, and behaved inappropriately, right?
Mhm.
So good enough. But how do I know this? How does the examiner know this? Tell me this, Krishan. They do not have the book in front of them, right? They also
Mhm.
are not going to open the book, right? Your
Mhm.
answer has to define it for them. So tell me exactly, how do you think the examiner will understand this?
They won't. If
Say
I
it
put
again.
in a quote that explains it.
Exactly. You have to quote a certain aspect, right? Then you have
Mhm.
to take it apart. You have to identify the author's method used that tells us exactly about the situation. And then you analyze it or you give context to it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, honestly, every paragraph should be able to answer this. Does that make sense? Should be able to answer the point that you are fixating upon. Does that make sense, Kushan?
Mhm.
For example, you can start off because see, the question is about, it's pretty simple. It's the keyword is tension, right? Presents the tension between past and the present. So you fixate yourself upon that and you highlight that in each paragraph, each body paragraph that you will be making. What exactly is the tension? How do you think the writer presents it? Williams presents it. Make sense? What
Yep.
language is used, or what symbols or setting or structure that gives us the idea or presents the picture of tension. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
You can also bring in context then. Does that make sense? You could talk about old
Yep.
South versus modern America, gender roles. Or you could even talk about the post-war change. Make sense?
Mhm.
So, so far, did you understand the overview?
Yep.
Then, of course, I can break it down in terms of your AOs. Do you understand your AOs generally, Gushan?
Mhm.
What does AO1 talk about?
Um, like the understanding of the text.
Yes, but it's more about giving a clearer argument.
Mhm.
It is about you as the writer, whether your writing is controlled or not, whether you're able to give a good argument or not, so on, and it has to be accurate. So I would say that the good point is that you were indeed aware of the main conflict or the main point of the question. Does that make sense? The fact
Mhm.
that Blanche refuses to let go of her past, or that Stella voluntarily accepts her life. However, I again do not feel like your argument was strong enough, though. It wasn't sharp enough. I hope that makes sense.
Yep.
So you have opened with, let's suppose, you have opened with William presents the tension and then through many characters. This is too general. Does that make sense? You could write something like this. You could talk about it something like that. The William presents the past as something maybe seductive, but destructive through Blanche's nostalgia and illusions, maybe, while the present is more brutal and modern through, you could say, maybe Stanley's realism. You could also say that the new America crushes the idea of the old South. Make sense?
Mhm.
So that would be a very good thesis statement. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Do you understand what a thesis statement means?
Mhm.
That would be a good opening, and then you build on it. Make sense? Then I feel like it is okay. You see, when we are writing literature, in terms of literature, or particularly in academic terms, you see, this needs to be a little bit more subtle. I if I was being honest with you and I was just reading this to examine this, I might not tell you this, but being a part of a certain board or a certain academic, again, board level, I feel like this particular, where was it, inappropriate thing, yes, behaved inappropriately with underage boys. Do you see this? This
Mhm.
sounds, very informal. This sounds also very unclear. Also, this sounds, I feel like this is too blunt. You could write this better in terms of that maybe Blanche's sexual scandal with younger men, is an inherent part of her past that is hell bent on destroying her present. Make sense?
Mhm.
Do you think that makes sense?
Yep.
Okay. Then again, I felt like your ending was also too general, too general. It was too weak. You have suggested or you have written down that you could say, in a manner of speaking, you are depicting that one should not be dependent, as you've shown us that Belle Reeve, the Bow sisters had lost Belle Reeve, right? But this is
Mhm.
very vague, isn't it? It doesn't really give me the idea of linking it all back to my statement. So either, okay, there's two ways you can conclude. You can link the conclusion point back to the main question itself, the very theme of the past versus the present, or you could actually give a final verdict about the author's message, William's message. Make sense?
Mhm.
If you think that is a little difficult to cater to, you can always retract and link back to the main statement. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now, AO2, writer's methods, use of language, structure, form, so on and so forth. This is something that really needs a lot of work, regardless, even at this point, Gushan. Okay, you did do good at certain points. You used the word, or yes, you were able to identify the method of the possessive phrase. My house, this highlights this, but I feel like you hardly discussed any actual dramatic methods, setting, even music. You could talk about symbolism, you could talk about stage direction, so on and so forth, which are very, actually, I think they're very important in Streetcar. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
So even if you start with the way that you started and just dig a little deeper and identify what are the language or structural details I can identify, just dig deeper into that, you'll be able to figure this out. I hope that makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay. Again, you talked about the meat most likely when it was covered in blood. I think something you wrote like that. Yes, the use of the meat in the package most likely being covered in blood suggests that Stella's pa. So you're not speculating. Never speculate. This is the one rule I want you to remember. Speculation leads to the examiner thinking that you're not certain about your argument. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
This isn't tied to the play's theme entirely, or it isn't actually cementing your argument. It's only making the examiner question whether this was the case or not. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Instead of this, actually fixate on the past versus the present symbolism. You could even you even can come across and have understood that there were state symbols as well. You could talk about the paper lantern. There was also the idea of bathing when she tries to wash away her past. It was a repeated pattern for Blanche. Do you understand?
Mhm.
You could talk about the setting itself. You could talk about how it was cramped New Orleans. Uh, there was, what do you call it? It was modern. It was mixed with mixed culture. The idea of the working class reality versus the very idea of the Belle Reef. Make sense?
Yeah.
How it feels suffocating, maybe. You could also talk about the idea of the gunshot in terms of sound, sensory details. Do you understand, Grushan?
Mhm.
Even if you know where you include very short quotations, you should be able to make it. You should be able to actually do really good on this. It's only a matter about not narrating events or retelling the story. It's more about analyzing what you have read. And analysis means taking it all apart and trying to make it understandable for your reader in as simple terms as you can, particularly fixating yourself on the question point. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay, then we had the idea of the context, AO3, which is something that you did good on. You did include the idea of the social expectations of women during the 1940s, talked about um, the idea of male attitude, double standards, so on and so forth. So, yes, you were able to also connect Mitch's judgment to gender expectations, again, which is very relevant. But again, I feel like sometimes it felt like, again, it became a little monotonous, it became a little narrative in nature. Again, like if you were maybe giving a history lecture rather than the idea being linked to the idea of the question or the play. For example, you talked about women were defined by strict gender roles and they had to conform, blah, blah, blah. But in this case, again, you have to wove this into a point, an individual point, and how does it actually depict the idea of the present versus the past? Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You do not have to drop it as a separate chunk. I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah.
Then again, some ideas were absolutely general. For example, men will always control and dictate women. That does not make any sense in this case. It's just like you're throwing it in for the heck of it. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You remember, examiners are always going to prefer precise information that will, again, comment the best in terms of your answer, comment on your answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Focus on the idea of the old South decline. Talk about maybe post war America, talk about the social changing social order. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So far, do you have any questions for me?
No.
And lastly, if let's suppose we talk about different interpretations, because this is what will push your answer into a top band category, particularly if we talk about AO5. Okay, so at this point, so you're only fixated upon um, one idea, which is Williams, right?
Mm-hmm.
You haven't, you could say, explored other possibilities, right? For example, maybe you could give any sort of alternative angles. You did talk about that Williams might be presenting Mitch as a traditional male. Talk about some other alternative as well. Talk about some other critic, maybe, if you can add in here. Some contemporary, maybe. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
You could even you and if that is not the case, that is something you cannot handle, you could literally talk about it like this, that even you could just bring in an alternative idea, that while some audiences may see maybe Blanche clinging to the past not as arrogance but maybe as a survival or to hang on to identity. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she's trying to overcome trauma. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So far, what do you think? So far, this was my breakdown of your AOs, but again, major points remain the same. Too few quotes, Gurshan. Not
Mm-hmm.
enough at all for an answer of this caliber. Okay? You have to have at least 8 quotations all over your answer. Then again, I did not see a lot of William presents methods, William has to be at the center of it because that's how you are taking this forward. Does that make sense? For
Mm-hmm.
example, you could use sentence starters like William presents this through, or this creates tension because, or you could talk about this suggests, as simple as that. Or you could talk about alternatively, if you're giving AO5, this could imply or it could imply. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Did you understand though?
Yeah.
I will give you a breakdown of this answer as well. But I think, yes, that's pretty much it. What do you think? Were you able to understand this?
Yeah.
Okay, if I have to mark this, because I think we've got to that point where marking this is important as well. Let's suppose if I have to mark this, I would not give you, realistically speaking, 12, more than 12 on this, Grishan, out of
Mm-hmm.
25. This would be a level 3 answer. While you did understand the question, you were clear on your focus of Blanche and Stella and Mitch and Stanley. But this is more of an attempt at narration than analysis. Your introduction was very general, your conclusion was very weak. Sometimes your expressions were extremely informal. I hope I'm making sense.
Mm-hmm.
If you overcome these, you can actually go to a top level 5, level 4 as well, eventually on to 5. Make sense?
Yep.
Did you understand this all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we stop here in terms of the recording first.